Hi everyone, thank you for tuning into another episode of Dance to the Music. My guest today is Charlie Dark from the UK. Hi Charlie, first of all.
Hello my friend, how are you?
Hi, how are you feeling today?
I feel really good. Yeah, really good.
This has been a long time in the making, as you said just now.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you. It's an honor for you to be here. Is that the way?
It's an honor for me to be here.
Thank you. But it's an honor to have you. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you. I'm trying to figure it out because I was prepping for today and I was watching or rewatching some of your interviews, right? And I'm like, how do I put this man's career into like 1 hour without, repeating stuff or for us for it to make sense for the both of us.
Okay.
And so I would like to start with Blacktronica, if that is okay with you.
Okay.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
The past weekend. Blacktronica Festival at the Summer Stage in New York City. That's a big thing and it was amazing.
Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it.
Yes. I've only been there Saturday, but it was amazing. So I'm presuming Sunday was nothing.
Sunday got rained out after one act, unfortunately. The thunderstorm came.
Oh, God.
And all the equipment started malfunctioning and we had to call it, which is unfortunate. But we'll be back.
There's always something. But that's exactly. It was amazing. Nevertheless, actually for it to happen.
Yeah.
And there was, I have to read this because on Saturday, you said something, you talked about the story and you told the story about how you emptied the dance floor, a 500 people dance floor years ago. And then you said, if you don't mind me quoting you, if you don't bring the culture along with the music, if you don't take the visuals along with the music, if you don't take the art, if you don't take the story of the people, it's very difficult for people to understand where the roots of it came from, particularly music from the UK.
Yes.
And then you went on to say that when you told people you wanted to do Blacktronica, the festival, you were told you have to do a club night first.
Yeah.
And if you could tell us about the story of how, first of all, who are the people who told you no? And then how did you start the club night? How did you start the whole project to begin with?
So the genesis of Blacktronica began in New York. I was flown over to play at the New Music Seminar. So this is the tail end of the 90s. And I had a box full of like UK dub plates, white labels, kind of fresh music that was coming out of the UK that was really popular in the UK. And in my naivety, I thought, I play in New York all the time. I'm going to slip some of these records into the set. And I played a Dizzy Rascal record and people were just like, no. They just couldn't get with the groove. And I'd had a few situations where I'd been coming to New York to play and it was always really interesting seeing kind of a New York's audience reaction to drum and bass, jungle, particularly in the way they danced. So the way that people danced to drum and bass and jungle in New York was very different to how we were dancing to it in the UK. But it was interesting. So I played this record, people start walking off the dance floor. The promoter is freaking out because he's flown me over and, he's having a meltdown in the middle of this party. And so I kind of came home to London a bit despondent. But I kind of had this epiphany on the flight home that, the reason why these records are not working when you take them out of the city is because the culture that informs them is not coming with it. And so when I got back, I was like, right, I want to do a festival, a 3-day festival that links and connects the dots between all of these different types of music and their influences. So the idea was we're going to have like a dub day, and then we're going to have like, the future day and a past, present and future day was the whole idea. And I was really adamant that I didn't want to do it in a club. I wanted to do it in an art institution because I felt that the music was being ghettoized and that it was during the period of time when kind of the jiggy era is happening, hip hop's gone very kind of commercial and glitzy and glamour, and this term of urban had popped up. And so anyone who's a person of color who was making music, you were lumped into the urban bracket, regardless of whether your music really fitted that or not. And that was really frustrating to me. And I was just like, right, you know, I've always been one of those people who, when I see a problem, I try and create a community that can solve that problem. So I'm like, right, Blacktronica is going to happen. And I went to the ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Arts, which is a place in London which has a reputation of pioneering difficult work from overseas. It was the place where Wildstyle premiered when it was first shown in the UK. So okay. I'm like, okay, these people are going to get it. I go there, give them the spiel, and they're like, 3-day festival, it's not going to work. So, you know, but if you can prove that it works as a club night, then maybe we will consider doing it as a festival. So that's how the club night began. And it was a reluctant club night. I really didn't want to do a club night. So it was supposed to be a one-off event, but it went so well that we continued doing it for another 6 years.
Amazing. Okay. 6 years is a long time.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Right. What was the venue or the name of the venue? Or was it a traveling?
It started at the ICA. So in a hallway in the ICA. It wasn't even in a like...
It didn't give you like an actual...
No, we had a hallway that we turned into a dance floor. We kind of had a parachute that we bought, that we put across the roof of the hallway. We set the sound system up at one end. And so you literally walked through the door and then walked into the corridor and there was the dance floor. But for some reason, it really, really worked because for a lot of people, particularly black people in London, they'd never been into an arts institute other than going on a school trip. So it was exciting. And it was a real mishmash of different types of people, different types of music. And it kind of, you know, very quickly became a giant success to the point where doors would open at 8 o'clock. And by 8:10, we'd be at capacity. And, you know, it was brilliant. Really, really cool. And it was just this idea that, you know, you can bring all these people who the music industry up until that point were really trying to keep separate. So I was signed to Sony Records in my Attica Blues project. And one of my biggest things was, you know, we delivered the album and then they're like, okay, what's the artwork going to be? And then, you know, we take them to our neighborhood. We're like, okay, so we want to shoot the artwork here. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to give it to the art department and they're going to come up with the cover. And they came up with this artwork that, you know, initially we didn't really like because it wasn't really reflective of what we were trying to do. But, you know, it was kind of it was a kind of an exciting time of rebellion and possibilities. And I was one of those people I grew up in the warehouse community, you know, warehouse party community in the UK. And what was really special about that is you'd go to parties and there would be punk rockers in there, and then the Rastas would be in there, and then the Rude Boys would be in there, and then the Posh Girls would be in there. And it was a real kind of slice of London all under one roof. So when we were putting Blacktronica together, I was like, we have to have, if you take a picture of the dance floor, it has to reflect the people who live in the city. And so kind of that's how it began.
Okay, you just said something. I hope I'll put that here, and I hope I remember it later on. So you said it ran for 6 years. At what point, or what was the reasoning for it to end?
Well, it got to the point where it became too big for the ICA. So then we started moving it around. So it went from the ICA to the British Film Institute. We did a really amazing event at the Victoria and Albert Museum as well. And then we started to run out of art spaces. Because when you do a club night and you've got all of these different types of people coming together, some of these people have never been in an arts institution before. So, you know, you might have like a 1,000-year-old sculpture that the dance crew are climbing over because why not? So eventually, you know, there was this kind of push to like, okay, you need to take this into a club. I didn't really want to do that. And then also it got to the point where I felt that musically it was becoming stagnant. And that people were really happy to dance to music from the past. They weren't necessarily happy to dance and engage with music from the future. So a new, you know, especially when grime started to kind of rear its head, it was kind of the broken beat they could deal with. The grime was a bit too street. And I just kind of was like, well, actually, you know, I think maybe it's run its natural course. And kind of parked it, you know, and then the running arrived in my life. And I actually had got to the point where I was really disillusioned with the music industry, because I don't think the music industry is a place that encourages people to thrive.
Can you elaborate on that, or be like, I think I understand what you mean, but it's very broad. What do you mean? Anything in specific?
I think like record companies, radio stations, particularly in the UK, at that point in time were following a formula. So it was almost like, right, what's happening in New York? All right, hip hop and R&B, brilliant, great. So let's make some pastiches of that. So if you were making music that was outside of that canon, you weren't getting a looking. And people just didn't know how to market the music. They didn't know how to talk about the music. And it was just really frustrating. And you just saw a number of artists doing like really incredible records and then reaching a ceiling really quickly of where they could take that music. Because it's pre-internet and pre-social media. So you're not getting the Samphas and, you know, just the more esoteric artists of color coming out. You know, you would never have had a Cleo Soul at that point, you know, Assault, any of those type of bands. It's like, you just couldn't do, you know, you could make the music, but you couldn't sell it. And there weren't places really that you could perform. And you couldn't really connect with your fans because you had to go through the record company and the press companies in order to do that. And so then what you have is people who are not from the culture telling you whether the music is good, telling you what avenues are available to you. Eventually you get to the point where it's like, you know, I'm going to go and do something else because I've done everything I can do here, you know. And I think for a lot of the artists from the UK, many of us have faced a large amount of frustrations where just kind of you get to the point where you're like, this is not worth it anymore. This is actually beginning to impede on my mental health. And I like my mental health. And my mental health is, you know, has always been up and down and slightly fragile anyway. And so I'd got to a point where I was like, actually, I'm going to stop doing this. And this running thing is beginning to take off. And I'm going to put my energy into that.
To really quick to just tap on that. For me, I feel like it's very subjective, right? But for me, the UK scene was always very, even though maybe you said the artist reached the ceiling and couldn't go further to a certain degree. For me, it always seemed very strong and very diverse and very just different, right? From, like you said, what came from out of the States. Do you think because of like now artists being able to sell their music independently and just like being able to do all the things basically on their own, that the UK music scene, or like there's just such a sheer amount of artists, but also I don't want to call it genres, but just so many different avenues that there are, and they're all just really dope, at least to, you know, that's what I believe. Yeah,
I mean, I think the UK has always been a melting pot of influences and styles, and we're really good at remixing things. So we're kind of, you know, we'll look at, you know, American hip hop and be like, okay, it's kind of cool, but we're going to speed it up, and we're going to add in some reggae and some breakbeats, and then we're going to give it a new name, and then we're going to give it back to you. The scene at the moment is really vibrant. You know, there are a lot of different, you know, types of music being made. There's lots of different types of artists, but I do definitely feel like the opportunities for those artists are not as wide as they once were. So I feel, and it could be the same thing that's happening here, but I do feel that there's kind of like boxes that you have to still fit into. And if you fit into that box, then there's bookings, there's opportunities, there's money to be made. And if you're not, then you're kind of left to your own devices. But I think that's a universal problem everywhere. You know, that's a universal problem. And I definitely feel kind of there are the industry's favorites who are people who are very good at towing that line between the commerciality and the underground, or dressing up, being commercial under the guise of it being underground when it's not really underground at all.
I understand. I understand. Do you, when you speak about the music industry like that, right?
Yeah.
I kind of see similarities of what I call the DJ industry.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do you think it
Yeah.
basically just applies the same way?
Yeah, there's definitely parallels in that. And that was another thing as well with Blacktronica, because in the UK, what I've always felt is you don't get credit for playing the music of your culture. If you're an outsider and you are playing that music, you're often more championed than people who actually come from the culture. So if you come from the culture, you're almost kind of told like, oh, you're being lazy, you're playing your parents' records. Whereas if you're like kind of, you know, an outsider, then you're like, oh, you're such a great digger or researcher, you know. And so I also had got to the point where I was like, I want to diversify the DJ booth. And I want to give opportunities to people who should be in the booth and should be allowed to tell their musical story. And that was really important to me, and it's still really important to me.
That's so. Since we're on the topic of DJing, I'm just go back and forth over here because you've told the story plenty of times of how you got into DJing and your journey. If you want, you can tell it again. If not, I'm not asking you that question. I'm wondering though how you also took a break, very long break.
Very long break,
where you didn't play at all, or at least not in the public eye.
Yep.
And I'm wondering now that you've been back for years now, what are some of the thoughts and observations that you've seen over the last years, but then also how it relates to your decade-long career of DJing, you know?
I mean, I started DJing in 1983, a very long time ago. That's when I first started playing, but I'd say I really started playing in kind of like, you know, clubs, probably around 1992. So it's, you know, it's a fair long time. To be honest with you, I feel it can be, being a DJ used to be really cool. You tell people you were a DJ and they'd be like, wow, there'd be like fascination. Now I find people kind of look at you like, why on earth would you be doing that? Because there were so many people DJing. And I think people's idea of what a DJ is has kind of been a bit warped by the COVID years. So I feel there are days when I wake up and I'm really positive about it. And then there are days when I wake up and I'm really frustrated by it. And I think a lot of DJs actually globally are feeling the same thing, because I definitely feel like we're in a period of time when it's about the amount of followers you have, the amount of viral moments you have. The music's become kind of secondary. And I do definitely feel like, you know, we're in a position where if you play the game, you can thrive. If you don't, you're going to find it hard. If you're prepared to play for free, then there are more opportunities than if you are, no, actually, I know my worth and this is what I would like. Then I feel like sometimes you can just get frozen out. But I then, at the same time, what I find, and this is one of the reasons why I come to America a lot and I come to New York a lot and I spend a lot of time sitting down and talking to different people, what I've realized is regardless of whether you're Premier League, DJ, Champions League, kind of in the top 10, top 50, a lot of the people who I really respect, love, have looked up to are facing the same frustrations. So that gives me hope. And it also gives me inspiration to be like, actually, I feel like some of the places that we have aspired to play over the years that were formerly underground, now when you go and play those places, they are a bit commercial and they're a bit naff. So actually what I've realized is you got to build your own universe around you. Yeah, that's really, really important. And you have to build your universe around you and you have to build your fan base around you. And I think it's, you know, we're seeing a time when it's time to go back to doing things in unconventional ways, in unconventional spaces, and being a bit more underground. And it's okay not to be on Resident Advisor. It's okay not to be mentioned in Mix Mag or DJ Mag. It's okay not to have done a boiler room. I always tell people this boiler room story is, I can distinctly remember sitting in my house, my phone rang, my friend, who's one of the people who had set boiler room up, was like, yo, dude, you know, we're going to basically invite people around to our kitchen and we're going to film the DJ set. And I was sitting there being like, why would anyone want to watch a DJ set on their computer when you could go to the club? And so when I did Boiler Room, I did it with King Britt and Digo from 4Hero. And they were like, don't bring anyone with you and don't tell anyone. So it wasn't the days when you were like, oh, I'm coming to do Boiler Room and I'm bringing 100 of my friends and they're all going to be standing behind the box with me. It was a super underground, like, don't tell anyone where the studio is. It was just literally the three of us and the camera. And that's how it was. And I think it's kind of really interesting that it's blown up to this thing. And I think it's really influenced the way that people play now. And also how an audience behaves and what they expect from a DJ. I love dancing. I'm like, dancing is a real big thing for me. And I can be a performer. But for me, the music comes first. And if I have to jump around and perform circus tricks in the booth, I'd rather stay at home because I've got a great sound system in my house. I've got all the records, and the most beautiful woman I've ever met in my life lives in my house with my baby, so I don't need to be in the club. I'm good.
Hey, there's nothing else you need to wish for at this point.
Yeah.
No, but you bring up a good point of like you're more comfortable in your surrounding at your home than into what some venues might expect from you, or not even just the venues, even the audience, like you said. Boiler Room and all the other platforms that there are have I, again, my opinion, have trained the audience, and obviously the COVID years as well, to obviously just look at a performance rather than actually being there consciously, like I'm here for my own experience and not to look at somebody's performance.
People don't dance in the UK. When you go to clubs in the UK, people aren't dancing.
Is it the same as here?
No, because here there's still pockets of people dancing, like getting down in the club.
Pockets, there are.
Right. So what was really interesting about, doing Blacktronika in Central Park Summer Stage is kind of like, I'm like, wow, man, like there are people really getting down, like a little dance circle. People are going back and forth. And I love that. That's kind of like, for me, that's kind of, because that type of energy starts to ripple across to the rest of the people in the crowd. But this idea that I go and I watch the DJ's performance through my phone, that's really, I'm like, why would I want to, like, that's of no interest to me whatsoever. I'm like, it's boring.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with you.
And that's the thing I've always loved about when you come to New York is like, you see people getting down. Like, I can remember coming to New York, going to a house club. If you come from the UK, your idea of people dancing to house is like one hand in the air, kind of like pumping it out. And then you go to like a New York house club, early 90s, and you see people break dancing, getting on the floor, circle opening up, people battling. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is like this expression of freedom. It's crazy. I used to work for Channel 4, TV station in the UK. And I was a person like, we actually somehow managed to show a clip of, is it called Wrecking Shop? I always call it Wrecking Shop.
Yeah, the one you just mentioned?
Yeah, Wrecking Shop in the show. Because I was just like, this is an amazing phenomenon that we need to be letting the world know, like our youth culture know about this. It's brilliant.
Well, thank you for showing it.
It's okay. I think that for me, like the house dance thing is amazing to me because I tell people about, summer dance. I'm like, yo, like you're going to go to Amsterdam. There's like 3,000 people in this place and they're going off. And people are like, I've never heard of it before.
There are people, and that's the thing. I'm always conflicted. Me having this dance background, right, and being heavy into dance, and then now venturing more into like now this is the DJ, the music scene over here. Even though it's like everybody needs one another. Yeah. But it's really separated, and obviously, like you mentioned, there's still pockets here and people do get down, but like in the grand scheme of things, there's also a lot of venues or parties or things where to, tag on what you said earlier, it does also reflect, the dance floor does reflect the environment of the city and how the city has changed.
Yes, most definitely.
Right? So there are not as many people dancing anymore.
Yeah, most definitely.
Unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to diminish the folks who are still out there and holding that ground. But I'm wondering, first of all, I'm wondering how the big topic of gentrification has influenced London in that sense, or maybe not the city, but the spaces of the music spaces and the dance spaces.
Yeah. I mean, gentrification has swept most cities, but it's definitely impacted clubland because people have realized they can make money from it. And so when that happens, you get people who are very good at numbers who start thinking, what bits can I cut away so that I can make more money? And essentially the thing about clubland is it's a flawed concept because the idea is we make our money from the bar. So the more people drink, the more money we make. And so that starts to impact tempo. Then you get this kind of idea of like, okay, we now have to start pushing the tempo up because if you push the tempo up, then people, dance a bit harder, then they start to sweat, then they need to drink more. You've got these club spaces that actually are quite badly run because you've got a space that's costing you a load of money, but it's only open on a Friday and Saturday. And so for the rest of the time, nothing's going on. It's not a community centre. It's not a school. It's not, a place for workshops. It's not an incubating hub for young artists. It's empty, which is why I love Cosmic Arts so much. Whenever I go to Cosmic Arts, I'm like, man, this is like paradise. This is amazing. Like, how have they done this? And we need more spaces like that. Because ultimately what happens is when the gentrification of clubland happens, the real people stop going. And it becomes like this thing where it's not edgy anymore. And it's almost this thing of where people feel entitled to be in the space. So because I've now paid to come in, I'm now dictating what the DJ should play and who else should be in there. And I have a problem with that because my early forays into clubland, it was the rebels and the pirates and the disruptors who were in clubland. When you told people you were going to club, they would look at you and be like, whoa, that's a bit dangerous. Wow, like, really? It wasn't this thing of like, going to the club was the same as going to the supermarket. Exactly, that's how it feels sometimes. So it's become fast food, and I don't, I like a fast food, but I do like real food. So I'm older. And so for me, I'm just like, and then what I don't like is the fact that you've got people who've come in who then start to rewrite the history of the music and the scenes and who's important and who's not. I have a real problem with that. And what I also realize is, particularly coming from the running world and the wellness world, which is like where people are about progression. I went for a run and I did it again and again and again. And then my cardio got better and that allowed me to access this new enlightenment in my life. And then you go to clubland and it's like, oh, actually, we just want it to be the same. We just want a blueprint that works. We don't want to change it. No one wants to debate. No one wants to have a discussion. No one wants to have change. So you just have a space that's filled with a lot of people who are kind of, they're very, very happy with the status quo. And they will sit on the sidelines and complain, but not actually be brave enough to get up there and change things. So for me, what I realized was like, right, this idea of being a DJ, well, we're all lumped underneath the same umbrella at the moment, but there are different types of DJ. So I had to have a very honest conversation with myself is, what type of DJ are you, Charlie? What type of DJ do you want to be? Where do you thrive the most? Now, I love, my ego would love to be playing at festivals to 5,000, 6,000, people. But any time that I've tried to do it, I realize it's like, I'm going to play 3 house records and then I'm going to play the Crazy African record. Like, that's just in my DNA nature, right? I'm not one of those DJs that can basically just be monotone and just give you an hour of the same. And I know, some of my friends are like big DJs in that field. They get paid crazy money to go and do that. And I just realized, you know what? I can't do that. So I'm not even going to aspire to do that anymore. I realized I like being in the basement with 300 people, one light, and a killer sound system. That's me, you know? And I had to be really honest with myself and realize, well, if that's the route that you want to go, you can't complain that you're not getting booked over here or that opportunities. That's, you know, some people are really good at going and doing that, and let them go and do that. And then suddenly you just don't get frustrated.
Yeah, and that if you play that whole frustration part, then it goes back to your mental health and
Yeah,
your well-being
because
as well.
it's the thing about it is like DJing attracts vulnerable people and fragile people. Really, if I'm really honest about it, it's kind of like
I always say we're just a bunch of misfits.
Yeah, definitely. You know, put a DJ booth in front of me, I could talk to anyone. It's like, but to be in the room with 300 people and no DJ booth, I'm probably in the corner. You know, and so I don't know about you, but I definitely have that thing where it's kind of like the anxiety leading up to the gig. Then there's the gig itself, and then there's the post gig come down. My partner's always like, the superstar DJ's back home, and now he's gonna basically have the DJ blues for a couple of days, and then and it's a cycle. Because it can be a really lonely profession, particularly when you're touring internationally.
Yeah, I can
imagine. It's hard, man. It's hard. And you have to deal with a lot of nonsense. And people where you're just like, in any other environment, we'd be having a real problem now. But because you've employed me, I have to put up with your behavior. And so this is the reason why I'm really inspired by people like Theo Parrish, where it's like, I'm not playing with anyone. I'm coming in now, I'm playing 6 hours by myself on my terms. People like what Joe Clisell's doing, and it's kind of like, I like people who now are kind of like, I'm not going to play the game. I'm going to do it my way. And I think there's something really interesting in that.
But you have to have, a certain career already to say that.
Yeah, you definitely do. But I do definitely feel that I always say to people, if you've got 100 people who really mess with what you do, you're good. You can have a really nice career. You can make money, because I meet people, like I've got some friends in London, they run this party called Beauty and the Beat. And it's inspired by the Loft. So it's all Clipshaw systems and everything. They've been running this party for like 20 years. Monthly. 300 people. £10 a ticket. Always sells out. They're not in Mixmag. They're not in Resident Evil. They're not being heralded by any of the things, but they've got one of the best parties in the UK and no one knows about it. And they're cool because they've got this ecosystem that allows them to keep doing it on their terms. And that for me is really aspirational, and I really like that because it's kind of like, actually, if you build it, they will come. I think what the problem is often what happens times we start building over here and then we're like, what's going on over there? Okay, let me try a little bit over here. So, and I think actually drawing the line in the sand and just being like, you know what, actually that world of it, the way that's done, that's not really for me. I'm going to kind of do this over here. Really important.
I wanted to ask you, using that party as an example, right? Mm-hmm. And which we would consider underground.
Yes.
Or and I know that a lot of folks here in this city, in New York, are also trying to do their own thing. Mm-hmm. But again, if you don't have your own space, which is extremely expensive.
Yes.
Everything costs money. We all need money. Mm-hmm. How do you... I was going to say, how do you make money? But no, that's not the question I want to ask. Is what's the best way to make the most of what you want to do with the little amount of resources that most of us have?
I think, first of all, you have to ask yourself is how many people do you need to have a good party? Right?
Well, or what is good for you? What does that mean?
What is good for you? And then this idea of what does success look like for you? you know? So a lot of times, you know, you kind of, you know, you have these dreams and aspirations in your bedroom when you first start playing, and it's just like, I just want someone to pay me to play. And then suddenly, you know, I think I found myself at a point in my career where it was like, I'm getting paid crazy money and I don't want to go. I don't want to get on a plane. I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to leave the sofa. And I had to remind myself, like, Charlie, you know, you do remember that you dreamt this. You like, you wished this to happen. But at the same time, what you realise is sometimes it's kind of like, I'm going to go and take the £100 gig because I know I'm going to have a better time than the £1,000 gig, and be okay with that. And I actually, with the idea of spaces, I think what we need to start thinking about is redefining what a club space is. So in the late 80s, you know, in the 80s, there was a crew of people who were running parties on the trains. We got a train line that's called the Circle Line. So it circles around central London, and they would wait till the very last train, and they would get on, and they'd bring the boom boxes on, and they'd take the lights, you know, they'd take the light bulbs out, and they'd have the party on the train. Amazing. And that would be the thing. And so actually now when I look at it, I just think to myself, well, you know, a party could be, it doesn't have to be in the club. It could be anywhere. And I think if we just start really thinking about, I call it kind of like using the wisdom of your older self with the enthusiasm and rebelliousness of your teenage years. Because when you're a teenager, you'll be like, right, we're going to have a party in my dad's got a garage. There's only 50 people that can fit in, and it's the best party you've ever been to in your life. I want to start getting back into that kind of stuff because I just think it's more wholesome, you know. And I know it's frustrating when you're looking out and you're seeing people kind of doing their thing. Some people are more talented than you, some people are not, and it can be really confusing as to what direction to go. But I just think that we need to rip the rules up and restart again. Because I think the blueprint that we are following, even this idea that parties have to be at night.
Oh, yeah. Especially as we get older. I love, you know, we all love the day party.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I always say to promoters, like, don't put me on at 4 a.m. I don't want to play. I play early. You know, I want to play the party that finishes at 1 and go home. You know, I don't need to be 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. That's just not me anymore, you know, and that's cool. You know, it's like, there are still some amazing parties. You know, I went to nowadays, what did I go to see? I think I went to colouring lessons. Is it called colouring lessons?
Yeah, that's Muscle Cars Party.
Yeah, Muscle Cars Party. I think last year or the year before, I kind of stumbled upon it. I was like, this is really cool. And it wasn't like there were a load of people in there, but the vibe was like really, really cool. And I still find when I come to New York that there is small pockets of things that are just really interesting, especially if coming from my side of the world, where you just come away inspired, being like, wow, that was really, really cool. So I haven't given up hope. Definitely not.
No, I don't think you, out of all the people, would give up hope.
Well, sometimes you do. You know, sometimes I definitely do have moments of frustration. So I had, you know, you got to think it's kind of, we started Blacktronika in 1999. We've only just managed to make the festival happen. And I'm standing on that stage being like, this is amazing, because I'm looking at the lineup and I'm like, hold on, we've got the dude who invented acid house music. We've got the next guy from Body and Soul. We've got Wajid, you know, from Detroit. He's got a, you know, music school. You know, DJ Remarkable. Like, all these people, I'm like, the lineup was so crazy. And then I know, like, I'm going to go back to London and I'm going to get the, oh, you know what, mate? Yeah, but your name's not big enough. I'd be like, brother, I just did a party in Central Park. What are you talking about? So you're going to go home to frustrations. But then I realise you got to think global, not local.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And then what you realise is a lot of the people, whether you're Louis Vegas or whoever, they play more in Europe than they play at home. So it's the same thing, you know. And that was a big moment for me to be like, actually, the world is a really big place. And we've been sucked into this illusion that dance music is everywhere. and it's not. And there are still places that it hasn't reached. So you can go there and take it with you and connect with artists there and make something special happen. You know, I think there's a place for everyone. I just think that, you know, we've been sucked into this illusion that it has to be a certain way. And unless you're being built on XYZ, then you're failing. You know? So that's, you know, that's my thing.
Let's bring up, or I would like to bring up running a little bit. You mentioned it briefly. And again, you also told the story of how you got into running and the creation of Run Dem Crew.
Yep.
Up to you if you want to repeat it again or not. But I would love your thoughts on obviously what running means after so many years for you, for your personal, but in general for mental and physical well-being.
Yep.
And then we've talked about the dance floor already a little bit, but how it relates. So if you, I mean, I do, but the similarities between running and dancing, or dancing, as you guys say.
Dancing. Very English accent. Running saved my life, but yoga had the biggest impact.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm a yoga teacher as well.
I forgot to mention, yes,
I'm kind of a retired yoga teacher now, but I will get back to it. But I think running saved my life because it arrived at a time when I really needed it. It gave me my self-confidence back. It gave me my sense of exploration back. It gave me my community back because I feel like the community in the music world had kind of been lost once kind of people started making music at home as opposed to being in studios. Once people start becoming successful in the music industry, then you spend less time with your friends. You know, I'm not seeing King Britt in the flesh anymore. Now I'm turning up to a venue where he signed the wall, you know, in the dressing room 6 weeks before. So I think that if you are in this music world and you are not taking care of your physical health, then you're not thinking about your future. Because we've seen so many people who burned very brightly in their 20s, but never made it to their 30s. And I'm like, you're a great DJ in your 30s, but imagine what you're going to be like in your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond. So the whole thing about running for me was just trying to create a world where my music community could come together to help each other be the best they could be so that we could grow older together so we could see what more magic we could create in our later years. And I obviously running has become very commercial now. It's become very popular. And the reasons why people are doing it maybe have changed. You know, I often get emails like, oh, we want to come and do a session about dating at Run Dem Crew. I'm like, nah, actually, we don't want to do that. That's kind of,
interesting. I'm not into that running world, but that's a very interesting.
Oh man, that's like that's a very big thing. You know, because ultimately at the end of the day, it gives people confidence, both in mind and body. And there is something quite primal about running as a group at speed together. People suddenly start looking more attractive. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Like they're sweating, they're wearing less clothes. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I just, again, my thing is just kind of like you have to take care of yourself because the DJ schedule is a grind. I remember being in LA with Josh Wink. You know, he did a high state of consciousness. And we're like, and he's like, we're like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I just did my workout in my hotel room with my record box. We were looking at him like he was crazy. Like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, I've got this whole workout routine that I do with my record box when I'm on tour. And then it came time to order food and we're like, burgers and blah, blah, blah. And these guys are like, they've been very conscious about the food they were putting in their body. And then I suddenly started to realize like some of the people who like you really see thriving is because they treat this thing like a job. And that means that they understand that health is wealth. And so this idea of like excessively burning the candle at all ends doesn't work for them. I actually say I have people that became a better DJ once I started running.
Interesting. How so? Forgot.
It helped my concentration and my focus because ultimately like running a marathon is a bit like a DJ set. There are peaks and there are troughs. There's highlights and there are low points. and and it's taking you, 3-4 hours, and you have to be locked in because otherwise, things can go wrong. And so actually what it meant is I started to think about DJing in a different way. I stopped playing music at people and started consciously playing music for people. Really looking at the dance floor. What are they reacting to? What are they not reacting to? Really thinking about the sound systems I was playing on. What records are going to sound the best on that sound system, as opposed to, I just want to play that record. And because I've always been one of those people who were like throwing a curveball, realizing you can't, play 6 hours of curveballs to people with no lifeboats for them to get onto because they just look at you confused. And again, running taught me that. And just like really observing how a party starts and unfolds, peaks, and how it finishes. And just being a bit more professional about it, and I stopped looking at it as kind of like, I'm just this is just an extension of my bedroom. This is not an extension of your bedroom when there's 2,000 people in the club and they paid a big load of money to come and see you play. It's kind of like, actually, you're responsible for these people's happiness and emotions for a period of time. You don't know what they've been going through. This could be the last time that they ever dance. You make sure you do a good job. Oshalade taught me that. I saw there's a very famous club in London called Plastic People. It's no longer exists.
Yes, I've heard of it.
And, the owner of that club was he would just book obscure people from America to come and play. So he brought Theo over early, Moody Man, Oshalade, and he brings Oshalade over and no one comes. There's like 30 people in the club. Oshalade walks in the booth and we're like, there's not many people here. So he's going to, it's going to be like a slow climb. Comes in, first record, bang. It's like, and just the electricity of the set. He played to those 30 people like there were 30,000 people in the club. Energy was off the charts. And I was like, this is really interesting. And it kind of taught me this idea of like, it doesn't matter how many people come out to you. You have to give them 110% of your best. But onto the idea of dance, because it's basically running, dance, all based around cardio. I get the same endorphin hit from running as I do from dancing. And so for me, they're in parallel with each other. And, there's nothing more embarrassing than being like, you're a DJ, you're playing the record, you're really getting into it, and I'm going to come around to the front of the booth and have a little dance. 2 minutes in, you're like, you're winded. You go back. And I was like, that's happened to me a few times. I was like, okay, we need to be serious about this thing,
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a runner yet. Maybe one day, I don't know. Like you said earlier, it comes when it comes to me.
Yeah, it comes when it comes.
But I can see the high that you just spoke about, in especially like when it's with people that are like, like-minded people that are there with you. With I don't know if those groups that your crew, or if it there are other crews out there, does everybody know each other and they all like show up every time, or is it just like I'm trying to compare it to a party environment where you might know a big chunk of people that are there, but there's also people that you don't know.
I mean there's always like a core of people who come, and then there are new people who kind of drop in, and that's cool, because for me it's like I always say to people, Run Dem Crew is essentially based on the type of parties that I went to as a teenager and as a young man. So I want to have that kind of energy. So that's the reason why when I'm looking at my running crew, I'm like, okay, we need some people from this community, some people from that community, some people from this community. We need a nice mixture of genders, beliefs, sexualities, because they all contribute a different energy to this thing that we're trying to build. And so there are very close parallels between the dance movement and, the running movement.
That makes sense. Okay. It feels like we're in a submarine right
Yeah,
now.
I've got
Doesn't
no
it?
idea
Yeah.
what that noise that noise
We're
is.
in the basement, just
Yeah.
in case if you hear any noise. And I think what happens is they're taking apart the building next door. So
Okay,
maybe
cool.
that's what we're.
Yeah.
We're still alive though. We're good.
Still here. We're still here. We're rocking.
I have here my note here,
Yeah.
and that says reinventing yourself as an artist. And the reason I think I put this down because you were talking about it in a previous interview, but then now listening to you speaking to me here and you telling like all these aspects of your decades long different careers. It's not just like one thing, right?
No.
And then there's this big break of you not DJing, right?
Yeah.
Where, like you said, you went through depression, but like other people, I'm sure went through the same thing. And I'm wondering, did you ever consciously change lanes, or was that something naturally happening where it was like, okay, if I'm not doing this, I'm gonna do this and see what happens? Or like how, you're creative, you're not just stuck into one career path that I don't know, a lawyer has maybe. So how were you able to manage that for so long?
Well,
to pivot here and there, and
I think for my parents are West African and they're immigrants. And so if you're the child of an immigrant, particularly if your parents, are from Africa and you've grown up in the 70s, they've arrived in the country with these dreams and aspirations that maybe haven't happened. And there's this kind of expectation placed upon you about what path you're going to take. But I think coming into my teenage years in the 80s and the type of school I went to, which is kind of like, I went to a very prestigious kind of English school, you suddenly meet people who kind of stop pushing your buttons and being like, there's other options out there. And then also when you're coming, you're growing up in the 80s and hip hop arrives, and then, acid house arrives, then suddenly you start realizing like, well, all my life I thought I was going to be a lawyer or a doctor, but there's this whole other world out there that I'm being exposed to that maybe I feel like I could have a path in. And so I just have always been one of those people who's like, has been very curious about the possibility of being able to do something different. And when you're in the UK as well, what happens is if you're good at something, you hit the ceiling of opportunity really quickly. So then the doors start closing around you of where you can take it. So then you could either have two things. You could either sit at home being frustrated, or you can pivot into something else and take the skills that you've learned from one era into somewhere else. And that's always been the thing that I've naturally done. So I, started off wanting to be a music journalist, then kind of pivoted into the, the early things of DJing, then kind of was like, well, I really like American hip hop, but I live in London, don't have a gun, don't have a Jeep, don't know no fly girls, don't know no gold chains. And actually every time I go to hip hop jams, some altercation happens where I don't feel safe because I wasn't one of those people who was going to the jam with a posse and a crew. It would just be me and like a couple of my friends. Then you discover the jazz world, the jazz dance world. And then, the jazz dance world opens you up to the world of rare groove. Then you meet someone who's got equipment, who's like, this is how you make a beat. And then that brings you into another world. And I've always just been one of those people who's been like, okay, that's really exciting over there. I'm going to go and do that.
Sorry to interrupt you. Have you ever felt like you had to stick to one thing? Like, how they say master of all trades or whatever?
No. Because actually, I think if you stick to one thing, eventually what happens, you reach a roadblock. And I really, really realized that during COVID, where you're sitting there with your friends and all they've done their whole life is DJ. And suddenly they're like, I've got no work. And I've got an amazing record collection, but there's no work. And I'm like, yeah, but think about the skills that you've learned from DJing and how you could take those skills into other areas. And what I realized is some people were like, they're just too scared to try something new because they don't want to be a beginner again. And I love being a beginner. I love it. I love basically starting from the bottom and learning all over again because what it does is it reminds you of being a child. and it reignites your curiosity. And that's really important for me.
Okay.
So that's, you know, my advice is kind of, particularly now with YouTube and, you know, chat GTP, there's like, you know, and the internet, anything is possible. And that's, again, so when I find myself getting frustrated, I'm just like, dude, you're just like, you're not, you need to take a step back and re-look at the possibilities again, because there are all these different possibilities that you could be doing, but you don't, you know, don't allow yourself to just get locked into this tunnel vision of this is all you can do.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you haven't done yet that you want to do? If you want to talk about it, because sometimes people is like, I don't want to talk about it when it's not done.
I've always wanted to make art, as in physical art that people can have in their houses,
like visual.
Yeah, like painting. I'd always wanted to do that. That's the one thing that I haven't got round to, you know. And I think maybe it's because I went to school with some people who are kind of, you know, really famous graffiti artists now, or street artists. And I know some people who are in the fine art world who've like done really, really well. And maybe I'm a bit embarrassed to be like, oh, here's my little contribution. But I think for me, that's the thing that I would like to get into.
Okay.
You know? And I'd like to get back into dance.
I don't know if you ever stopped, but I also don't know how heavy you were into dance. You know what I mean?
You know, I always say to people, the reason why I became a DJ is because I like to dance, and I foolishly one day stepped into the jazz dance circle in a club with the 5 moves that I had been practicing all week, and someone did a backflip in my face. And then, you know, did a standing backflip in my face, and then his friend ran up to the wall and did a backflip off the wall straight into the splits, and everyone shooed me off the dance floor. And as I was walking in shame off the dance floor, I looked at the DJ box, and I was like, wow, they look like they're having real good fun. And the thing about the DJ box is you can't see the DJ's feet. So that's why I gravitated towards being a DJ. But I've never been able to follow steps, and I'd like to go to a class and, you know, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and be able to follow the steps, because like that for me would be like a really big accomplishment.
Oh, okay. We can make that happen.
We can make that happen.
We can make that happen.
I know you've got amazing dance skills. So
thank you. But I always tell people who, when I teach, I'm like, I can teach you the moves and stuff, but it's only one part of me. For me, the fun part is to see you not in class, to see you dance in the, you know. Yeah.
I think it's there's an amazing, particularly as a man as well, when I see men, like, you know, those old school kind of house dudes who are still doing it. I follow all their videos. I listen to the interviews, and I'm really, you know, inspired at how free they feel when they're expressing themselves. I will dance up a storm in the DJ box, but, you know, once I'm back on the floor, I'm back against the wall and I'm kind of shuffling.
Yeah, the barrier is gone.
The barrier is gone.
I understand. But, one question I wanted to ask you, because I know the UK, at least was, I'm not sure how it is these days, big on radio, especially pirate radio. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what your influence was and what radio does, what kind of role it plays these days for you.
Right. So I would say, again, you're the child of an immigrant and you're under curfew. And you're under rules and you're under manners, which means that when your friends are going out, you are not going out. So pirate radio was a way of still being involved in the world, particularly when they were doing like live broadcasts from events. Pirate radio is everything to me. I started listening to pirate radio October the 30th, 1983. I know the exact date because I had a birthday party on the 29th of October, and my cousin came and she was so appalled at the music that was played at the party. She wrote down on a piece of paper the frequency of a pirate radio station. She's like, go and listen to this station. It's going to change your world. I tune into JFM. The first record I hear is Running Away. The next record they play is Expansions. And those 2 records, this idea of running away from yourself or running towards a new future, and then Expansions, this idea of expand your mind, like he's telling you, expand your mind, for me was like, right, okay, cool. And I immersed myself in the world of pirate radio. I'm a pirate radio nut. I collect tapes. I've got a very, very big pirate radio collection of tapes. I started my own internet radio station during COVID. I love it. It's like I love radio. And if anything, if I had the choice of being at the crossroads of continuing to DJ at the club or get deeply into radio, I'd go radio. I think there's a sense of mystery and imagination and intimacy that you have from radio that you don't get from the club.
Even people obviously still listen, but now through the internet rather than through the actual the radio.
Yeah, the radio. Yeah.
Do you think it still has people still like listen the same way?
I think it depends on where you are in the world. Yeah, I do. Yeah, definitely. I think for some people, radio is still like it's their, it's their thing. I love, I think radio is really, really important. I hope it never dies. And it's kind of, again, you become a much better DJ once you've done radio.
Because of just the sheer like ever digging and looking for music, or
I think they're digging and looking for music, but also learning how to communicate through music and to create mood and to take people on a journey and listening experience. A lot of DJs, when you hear them, they're just like, they could be playing to anyone because they're just battering you with like music, So when you've done radio, I think what happens is you start to really think about the mood and time of the day. What's happening politically in the world? What's happening weather-wise? The economic climate. You start choosing records to soundtrack what's really happening in people's lives. And when you can translate that skill into the club, then it becomes a really different kind of, the way you approach it is just different. And it's kind of like, I think, special. I think as DJs, we should always be trying to be better. We should never just be just resting on our laurels. I think we should always try to be aspiring to be, to be better. And also I think the thing about radio is kind of like, you get this feedback from listeners that maybe you don't necessarily get from the dance floor. When you're in the message board or people are writing letters back in the day, like, you played blah, 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 and that changed my life. And I was going through this at this time, particularly for me, because I did a lot of radio during COVID. And I regularly meet people who are like, oh man, you played this record and, you just lifted my spirits or, provoked me into doing this. And thank you. And I love that.
I think the feedback is immediate. Maybe people are like communicating with you directly, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe more open to giving that feedback.
Yeah.
Versus maybe when you impact somebody that you played for at a party in a club, they might not give you the feedback right away, but then maybe years later they walk up to you and was like, that was this one night, yada, right? So I'm sure that has happened to you, and I'm sure there are people that you have impacted by playing a certain record when they most needed it, and they never got a chance to tell you.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's another reason why I think as DJs, it's kind of like, you never know who's listening to you. And that's why you have to give it 110%. And I've had situations in my life where, especially when you're like early in your career, or you have that gig where no one comes, there's like 4 people there. And then years later, you're in some other random country somewhere, and a person's like, yo, man, I came to your gig, you blah, blah, you played this, and I had this effect. He's like, what, really? I traveled from 6 hours to come and hear you play. And it's like, wow, man, you were really listening. That's really, really important. Because again, you never know what people are going through. And you could be the difference between life and death.
That is crazy, right? When you think about that.
And that's the reason why I think that people need to treat it with love and respect and treat it as an art, and stop just treating it as like this throwaway culture, because it's important. The role of a DJ is important. It's still important. But we as an industry, we have to be more professional. Because there's a lot of cowboys in the game who are just like, I'm like, you're just mashing it up for everyone else. Like, your approach to how you're doing it is mashing it up for everyone else. You're making it really hard for other people. You got responsibility to the culture. that it's come from, you know, and there's a history to this thing. And there's a lineage that we're following in the footsteps of other people who've, you know, they've gone through some hardships in order for you to be there doing your nonsense. Stop it. Be respectful. Take it seriously, you know? And if you don't want to take it seriously, then come out the booth, because we've got too many DJs as it is. You know? That's the thing I think about music making as well, is kind of like, there's so many people making music now, which is brilliant. But at the same time, you have to understand this journey that we've got to, where we've got to the part where just any old person now can basically make any old track out of any old thing. I'm like, no, man. It's like be serious, man. You know? Otherwise, the culture will die. And that's the thing. As I say, already now, it's like, you're a DJ? Oh, you can see people's eyes.
People have different reactions, but definitely not like, oh, okay. It's more like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and COVID just didn't help either. You know, COVID mashed things up and remixed the culture in a way that I'm just like, it's a bit whack, you know.
Fortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious because this is a thing of this podcast.
Yeah.
If you could, I know it's maybe difficult as far as like numbers.
Yeah.
Can you name me 3 tracks that you personally relate to dance or that remind you of dance immediately?
Oh, of dancing immediately. Well, Lonnie Liston Smith expansions, definitely. Got very distinct memories of seeing people dancing to that at various different times in my life. I think Strings of Life, that reminds me of kind of when you hear of a record being broke. So this idea of kind of like, you hear it 3-4 times in the night. Each time you hear it, the reaction gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You look at the DJ box and there's like a line of people being like, trying to find out what it is because we didn't know what it was. And seeing a field of people kind of just be electrified by a record. And there's probably some crazy broken beat thing that Digo made that that has made me be like, oh, you know what? Because we're thinking about people who've been on your show before. DJ Spinner's remix of Shauna Scoffrey. I love Days Like This.
Yeah, that's like, if there's classics, then there's definitely,
Yeah. That record, I'm like, you know, I don't know what he did, what magic juju sauce he was, you know, drinking that day, but he curated a record that I think is one of the universal house records of all time. Because you can play that at a wedding, funeral, christening, underground club, commercial festival, and it has the same reaction from the floor every time. And the lyric, I love Days Like This, just kind of transports you to this moment. And it just reminds you of kind of like this idea of embracing the day, embracing, you know, the times around us. It's an in the moment record. It's like, you know, so yeah.
Thank you.
Those are my 3 records.
Beautiful choices. I'm at the end here. I don't think I there's so many things we can talk about, but I also know you have a life outside of this.
No, I mean, it's good.
You already mentioned visual arts. That's something that you would still like to do.
Mm-hmm.
But more like maybe music related and Blacktronica related. What are some of the future things that you would like to do, or like maybe even have already in the process of?
Okay, so at the moment I'm restoring a sound system.
Oh yeah.
I'm restoring an old reggae sound system. It's kind of hybrid reggae audiophile sound system that I'm kind of building. And the reason why I'm doing that is because what I realized is a lot of the music that's had a really big impact on me in my life, I first heard through a reggae sound system, even though it wasn't reggae music. So the first time I heard house records, I heard them at warehouse parties being played through the reggae sound system, because the reggae guys were the people who were providing the sound systems for the early warehouse raves. Going to carnival and hearing house through a reggae sound system hits you differently from hearing it in the club. Hearing jazz records for a reggae sound system. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, and this idea of building a community around the sound system that's intergenerational, that teaches people how to set up a room for a party. Because again, that's a lost skill.
Oh yeah.
You know, how the journey from, dance from the door of the club to the dance floor, really important. The things you see, the smells, what you see in the space. This idea that a lot of people who are DJs have got no idea how sound systems work. A lot of people who go to clubs have got no idea how a sound system works. And also the fact that, sound systems have this a bit of a mysterious kind of like, it's a lot of old men kind of, not really giving away any information.
Yeah.
And, we need to get a more diverse audience into it if we want it to thrive. So that's one thing I'm working on. Ultimate aim is to have a school, the School of Dark, because I don't know why we're going to school and learning about Pythagoras' theory.
Have you ever used that after school?
Never. And so actually having a school that teaches you life skills, provokes your creativity as well, and remixes what a school could possibly be and what the school curriculum could be. That'd be really amazing. And then, I've got 3 children. One's about to turn 21. One's just turned 18. My youngest one's just turned 1. And so trying to be like a good dad to all 3 of them and a good partner as well is really important to me. And just kind of, helping people with their, creative dreams. I've always been someone who likes to give back to my community and give people time and energy and advice, because we need it.
We sure do.
We really do. So those are kind of like, the things, and slimming my record collection down.
Slimming it down?
Slimming it down. I think what happened to me is I made the fatal mistake of going to Giles Peterson's house when I was about 18. Right? Most amount of records I'd ever seen in my life. And then in the 90s and beyond, I hung out with DJ Spinner and went to his house. That will mess you up, and then you hang out with people like Geology. That's going to mess you up. And then you got friends who work in, like Sean Dubs, who work in record shops. That messes you up. And suddenly you wake up one day, you've got so much music, and you realise I've got more music than I've got days left to listen to. And what I don't want to happen is for something to happen to me and my music collection to become an albatross for my family. Because I see that a lot, particularly in the UK, where, people either passing away or they give up DJing, and suddenly they've got thousands of records that someone then has to deal with. And I don't want it to be split. I want it to go somewhere, whether to a museum or a school. I want it to be a resource for other people to be able to listen to. Maybe a music library.
I was just going to say the Dark Library.
Maybe the Dark Library. But what I realise is there's a lot of stuff that's just creating space, that's there. Because I think what happens when you first start DJing and you're surrounded by people who are telling you that you can't be a DJ, you start accumulating. Sorry, what were you going to?
No, I was going to say you were surrounded by people you can't.
Yeah, of course. It's 1989. Like, your parents have not left.
I get it.
What, we've
Gotcha.
left Ghana to come to London, put you through 7 years of private school for you to turn around to say you want to be an entertainer. Charlie, are you mad? So you start accumulating so much music that basically they can't throw your records away because there's thousands of them. They can't move your records because there's thousands of them. So it eventually becomes this thing where it's like there's so much of it. I guess he's gonna do it, and you become a hoarder. So I have to slim it down. Particularly when you got a 1-year-old. My son Zen literally started walking a week ago.
Oh, nice.
And discovered, like, I came downstairs and he's like flicking through the records because he obviously sees me getting ready for gigs. But then you're like, okay, well now he's walking. Oh, what's this £500 spiritual jazz record? I'm just gonna pick it up. Wow, the record's falling. Like, it's like got to deal with that. So those are the big things, and trying to stay happy and positive about the future in an industry in its current climate, because it could be really, 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 as you know, it can be really, really, really frustrating.
What is your definition of happiness for you?
I mean, I think Saturday, Blacktronika, that for me, that was one of the happiest days of my life. I actually had a bit of an emotional moment where I had to kind of go away to the side and have a little bit of a cry, because I actually couldn't believe that it was happening after all that time, you know, and to get that love and appreciation back. It was almost kind of like, you know, you write down in your dream book how you would like your dream gig to be, and then suddenly it's actually happening. And I feel a lot of times what happens is the universe delivers the stuff that you've dreamt about, and you don't take time to acknowledge it, you know.
And sometimes it comes so many years later that you're almost forgotten. Like, wait a minute, yeah. I'm like, I can remember hearing an acid house record made by Future for the very first time in a warehouse in London, and just being like, what is that? Like, what is that sound? You know, the TB303, it's doing this crazy. You're just like, what is that? And then all these years later, you're on stage with the guy who basically invented that sound. You're like, what? I was telling Joe Clisell this. I was like, I can remember coming to New York and going to dance tracks and, you know, seeing him in there and then being like, where's the crossfader on the mixer? Like, I'd never seen a rotary mixer before. Like, and why is it so loud in this shop? And this guy is mixing like seamlessly, flawlessly. And then you're standing there being like, I've got, you know, hundreds of records in my house that I came to New York that he sold to me. And now I'm on the bill with this dude. And there was a moment where basically I played like a UK garage record as my last record. And I'm like sitting there thinking, how's he going to mix this in? I had the same. I told Sean, I was like, I'm just here to hear the transition from you.
Yeah. And the transition, the way it came in, I was like, that's Blacktronika. That idea of connecting the dots between, you know, these different cities around the world and having that moment was really, 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 really special. So that for me is happiness. Like when you just wake up and you're just like, you're just smiling. Doing this is, you know, to be in New York and being a point in my career where people are actually interested enough to sit down with me and listen to stories and ask me questions, that makes me happy. Because there was a time in my life where the reason why I gravitated towards DJing was because it gave me a voice at a time when I felt voiceless, when I felt like no one was interested in my story. And so to have all this, you know, these years later, and especially when it's with someone that you respect, because I respect and love what you do. I'm like, I think, you know, I think you're like a really, I'm going to gas you up now. So just, you know,
I didn't bring my tissues. Hold on.
So get ready. But I definitely like, you know, I have a lot of respect for what you do and the way that you roll. And I wish that you had, you know, I hope that you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you remind yourself that I'm Mariella.
Thank you. I will start doing that.
Okay. You need to do that. You need to do that because the energy that you bring, we need. You know?
Thank you.
She's like, cut. he's embarrassing me now.
No. I'm not used to that. And also, like you said, you were looking for, I don't know how you said it, looking for a place where you had a voice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
You know, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, we know we need that. And also we need, like, you know, we need more feminine energy in the scene because it's like, there's too many dudes to just.
I love y'all dudes, but you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just a lot of old dudes. I'm just like, we need more feminine energy, man. It's like, you know, that's one of the things that's really, really missing, you know, because it makes the jams different. This is what people don't realize. It's like, there's like that energy, whether it's the person doing the door or in the booth, or that just makes it different and special. And we need that. That's the thing that is really lacking at the moment it's too much from a male's perspective. And that, you know, as someone who also has a daughter, like that just makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. I'm just like, you know, no club was ever good because it was 1,000 dudes dancing together in one space. Like, it's like,
yeah, no, I agree with you.
I mean,
yeah,
you know, but I know it's times are hard at the moment. But all I would say to people is just like, you know, just persevere, you know, and keep chasing the light, you know. And dark times are always followed by brighter times. And so, yes, we're in a period of time where it's really frustrating at the moment. There aren't very many opportunities, but it's not going to be like this forever. And the revolution is coming, and there's going to be a renaissance that's happening because the current model you can see is imploding. It doesn't work. And people are realizing that now. And the younger generation is suddenly going to realize, like, yo, I've just been to the 10th club night with exactly the same lineup, with the people playing exactly the same music. I want more. And there is this whole next generation of kids coming up who are like, I don't care about all you superstar DJs. They're boring to me. My mate in my hometown is a better DJ than the one that, you know, the platforms are telling me is the one I should be following. And I am here for that.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you
for
much.
your time.
No problem at all.
Yeah. Any last words you want to say?
If you want to get hold of me,
That part,
you can find me on Instagram at Daddy Dark RDC. I flirt with TikTok on occasion, but you know,
do you?
Yeah, I just do comedy skits on there. It's like,
let me find out. I have to get freaking TikTok now just to follow your comedy.
Yeah, but you know, every now and again we dip in, and yeah, that's it. If you ever need any help, advice, contacts, hit me up on the DMs. You know, I always try and help people wherever I can. I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in if other people hadn't looked out for me and helped me. So I just want to give back because I feel like dancing under the cover of darkness in communal settings is really important. It's liberating, it's empowering, and dance floors are important spaces, and they hopefully always will be.
Yes, thank you. I think they'll never go away, hopefully.
No, they're never going to go away. It's like, you know.
Just have to know where to find them.
Yeah, you just have to know where to find them and, you know, keep searching the underground. It's kind of, you know, the formerly underground has now become the new commercial.
Exactly. So I think that's a good point because I'm always like, all the things I can hear, it's very commercial. Yeah. Like it's very, I don't want to say commercial. It's very available everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And then now I'm wondering how the next underground is going to look and sound like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because, you know, I still meet, you know, because I spend a lot of time like mentoring and working with young people. And there, you know, I'm always discovering new things where you're just like, wow, like you had 300 people come to your party. It wasn't on Instagram. Like no one knows about it, but everyone, you see the pictures or you go, you know, everyone looks like having an amazing time. And that's always been the case. I just think we've just kind of been seduced into this thing where we haven't realized that there's been a shift. And so if you're really about it, you just have to keep digging, you know? So it's like, yeah.
Again, thank you, Charlie.
All right, come back to London, please. We need
you. Yes, please. I will for sure. I can't wait.
Yeah,
thank
we need
you. Thank you.
You're welcome, my friend.